This episode's going to start slow, but then I feel like hurry up midway through because I timed it wrong where I'm just starting my coffee now. Usually when we start the episodes, I'm like midway through a coffee or having just drank my coffee. And so I'm going to speak a little bit slowly, which is why I think I'm going to kick to Amber pretty much right away and then drink enough of the coffee that I can think thoughts. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But today we're talking about not necessarily what to do if you fail with a launch of your thing, but the fear that it's going to happen beforehand and how to get over that paralyzing thought. What do you do before if you're really worried that when you actually put yourself out there or put your product out there, your service out there, whatever you've been working really hard on, and then nobody responds? What are your next steps? It's a really scary thing. Amber, you've got a story that kind of launches into this, I think. You're the one who brought up this topic. Yeah. So why don't you kick into that, and I'm going to drink some of this coffee, which is very, very good. I found the guy in town here who actually roasts the coffee beans for basically the entire town. And I get them directly from him now. So it's pretty smooth. It's pretty good. Anyway, go for it, Amber.
Nice. Okay, fair enough. So I've been talking to a student who has been working so hard and has been struggling for quite a while now. And we've worked on a lot of things. We've polished her messaging and her niche, so it's a little bit more on point. And she's been doing interviews to really nail down the language that her ideal client uses. And so she's put in just this immense amount of work.
What does that mean? Interviews?
What do you mean by interviews. So we're doing permission marketing, but instead of doing a podcast, she's doing more of a kind of like Humans of New York approach. And so she's telling their story and sharing it, on her Instagram to have that, like, this is why they're doing what they do, not just, here's this weight loss story or whatever. It's here's the meaning behind this thing that they have a shared love of. It's a specific sport.
Are these clients of hers or just
just her ideal clients? Yeah. So the whole idea is, she's going to do the permission marketing thing. So partially to do that, but also to get the language that she needs because she's kind of too into it to where she's missed some of the language that would really resonate with them. And so it's a good refresher for her.
I know it's off topic, but are you cool if I dig into that a little bit more? Because I actually think that process is really, really interesting, and this seems like a good story for it. And I had 2 sips of coffee, so I can think thoughts.
He's in.
Not yet. Has not hit my veins yet. Okay, so she's interviewing people who are, you said it's a specific sport. She's interviewing people and sharing their stories on her social media, largely as a tool to become much more familiar with the language that they use. Is that right?
That's part of it. That's part of it. Yes. So, and then the permission marketing part. So she's she did these interviews to learn more about their journey in the sport, the things that they love about it, the things that they've struggled with, and to get the language there, but also to get feedback on, not direct feedback, but like the things that she's going to be adjusting in her program. And then she's asking them at the end of the interview, hey, like, I got a lot of great, feedback from you. Can we do a follow-up call? I want to show you some of the changes I'm making based on some of the things that you mentioned. So maybe
let's recommend the permission marketing episode at the end of it where we go into detail on that process. I think that'd be useful. Yeah, I don't know which one it is, but we'll find it and recommend it at the end of this episode to listen next. But Amber, my next question is, how did she find the people to talk to? And then the obvious follow-up from that is, and how did she ask them to talk to them?
Yeah, so it's really funny. She actually has a lot of these people in her network already because she's heavily involved in this sport. So she has a lot of great connections. But she also happens to be connected to someone who I'm trying to think how to say, because I didn't ask her permission to share, so I don't want to give too many details. So there's a sub niche of this sport that she's targeting, and a friend of hers is a coach, but in a different kind of aspect of it. And they talked, and they both put out like a call saying that she wants to do interviews for this specific niche. And she was flooded with interest of people wanting to share their story. And so that's how but she sent me a message. She's like, oh my God, I have like too many people that want to want to talk. And so I think she did like 9 interviews the first week or something like that. And then she had to like figure out how to pace herself after that. But she was already in the network, plus she had good connections that was willing to do a call out with her.
So the number one thing about the permission marketing that I kind of talk about a lot, and I think is really important, is if you don't have existing connections in your market, it might not be the right market for you. Mm-hmm. Like if you're sitting there and you're saying, oh my God, who do I talk to? I don't know anybody who's this type of person. You're probably choosing a market because you think it's a good market versus you think it's a good market for you. Mm-hmm. Like the 22-year-old powerlifter who decides that he wants to help new moms, lose 10 pounds and regain confidence in themselves, or whatever they say. And then his profile picture on Instagram is him lifting a massive log above his head.
Mm-hmm. Every time.
And so there are things that you can do in this world that just make your life easier. And it's already hard, and trying to be somebody that you're not or have no connections to makes your life harder. Now, Ren is a unique case where he is not, of course, his target market. He does work with mums, and he's not a mum, nor is he with, although I don't know if he's actually dating a mum or not. We know nothing about Ren's personal life. But let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, that he's not, because he hasn't shared it here.
Just make up one for him. Her name is Chandra, and she's redheaded.
Making up people for me.
Chandra, but it's Chandra without an H. It's spelt Sandra, but it's pronounced Chandra.
It's exactly what it is.
Yes, yes. And her son Jamil, who
Paco
loves
Pablo.
going
Juan
to
Pablo.
He's like, Papa, are you my papa?
Juan Pablo Jones.
Are you my papa? But Ren has a lot of connections to the audience that he works with, and we've spoken about that in the past episodes. If you really don't know anything about your market and you don't know anybody in your market, it's probably not the right market for you. So how did she then ask them to be interviewed, Amber? Like, what did she say? Like the actual words. How did she reach out to them? Do you know any of those details?
No, I don't know the specifics. I just know when we talked about it in general, it was just to say like, hey, I want to interview this type of person and share their story in this sport that is largely male dominated. There's a lot of things for us to talk about. And, things that you might've been worried about and why you decided to do it anyway and all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully to kind of give more confidence to other women who want to do this sport.
Cool.
So that was the chat.
So she probably had them as a text message, or
it was on Instagram. Yeah, it was just on Instagram.
So she sent him an Instagram message and said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. I want to profile you.
Basically,
can we have a chat?" And she had some connection to them, or familiarity, or probably some closeness. Okay, very cool. So I just thought that was interesting to get into, because those are the questions we always get. And we're like, yeah, just talk to people. They're like, who do I talk to? How do I talk to them?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I thought I wanted to kind of detour into that. Okay, sure. Getting back into the point. So she's had these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And now
she's done the interviews. Yeah, she's done the interviews. She's really creative and brilliant when it comes to putting together like visuals and telling a story and all that stuff. And so she put these stories into reels and did a fantastic job. And now she's like, okay, I need to start turning this into money.
Sure.
And so she's going to be doing the rest of the permission marketing. But on top of that, she wants to do another launch. And she sent me a message and she's like, I am straight up terrified. Like, what if it doesn't work? I have been busting my ass. And what if it does not work the way that I need and desperately want it to? And so there's just a lot of storytelling, in her mind that she's doing. And she's tried a lot of stuff before and it just hasn't worked out. And so she's ruminating a lot.
Okay. And so what'd you guys talk about?
So I told her, the way that I deal with it in any case is, what's the worst that can happen, right? The absolute worst thing that can happen is that you get no one.
Yep.
Right. But long term, we know that sales often don't happen right now. So you'll have a lot of things moving forward that you just may not see. So we need to adjust expectations about what winning and what success looks like in a launch. If you get sales, fantastic. But there's work to be done after the launch. There's going to be a lot of nurturing and following up and that kind of stuff afterwards. So even if the worst case scenario in this couple-day launch that she's planning on doing, the worst case is not that scary, and it doesn't mean that it failed.
So, as you guys know, I submitted the manuscript and had it accepted for the Obvious Choice book. And so I'm starting to really dive into research on to the next book. I have a lot of notes that I've been taking for the last couple of years, and spoke to my agent about it. Really excited about the idea, the concept. And one of the things that I'm doing now is I'm reading a lot of books about purpose, about life purpose. And the next book is not about purpose, but purpose is a part of it. A relatively small part, but I feel like reading about purpose will help me understand or better verbalize some of the other concepts that I'm kind of putting together. So I was like, okay, well, I want to get a well-rounded view of this from people who are very articulate and proven sources. And so I always try to work backwards from what's already been proven in the marketplace, where people value somebody's thoughts or opinions or how they communicate about this thing. I was like, religion. Okay. So I put out a post across Facebook and Twitter and just basically asked for books. Said, what are your favorite books? From religious leaders on the topic of purpose. Any religion. I want to read widely. And there's a great thread on my Facebook, fantastic array of books. And also really respectful, which often doesn't happen with religion. And so I started reading them. So I've read 2 books in the last couple of days. I read pretty fast. So I've read 2 books, especially when I'm reading like this. I read pretty fast. And the first 2 that I read were both from Christian leaders. And what always jumps out to me, back in the day, I used to watch the Joel Osteen mega church events on TV, and I couldn't make sense of it why I was watching them at the time. I was fascinated by how he communicated. And it was the same Stephen Furtick. I went to see him live. A friend invited me, and I went to see him live at a megachurch event. And I was just I was sitting there with a notebook, just taking notes on the persuasion techniques and the mnemonic devices that he was using to communicate. It's fascinating. These guys are world-class in every sense of the word. And so I didn't connect with the religious aspect of it, but that's fine. Doesn't mean that you can't see value in it. And I did. And the same with these books. And what always jumps out to me whenever I read anything or listen to any religious or spiritual leader where there is God. Now, God might be called a whole host of different things, but there's a God. And the message always comes back to one word, which is hope. And when I really think about it, it always comes back to hope. God is there to give you hope when otherwise you might not have any. And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, how brilliant is that? Because I'm reading this book on purpose. And it was called The Purpose-Driven Life, which is one of the most famous books on it. Right? And I'm reading it and I'm sitting here trying to figure out solutions to all of these problems or frameworks to solving it. Meanwhile, the actual probably best way to solve this for the largest amount of people is what these people are doing, is what these religious people are doing, which is actually giving somebody hope to keep going, giving somebody purpose to continue on. And I think about that a lot in terms of coaching. We often jump into this problem solution type framework, when actually, if you look at the most successful coaching on the planet ever in history, unquestionably, it's religion. The most successful coaches ever in history are religious leaders. There's no question. Whether you believe in religion or not, whether you believe in God or not, I'm still on the fence of where I sit in that equation. As I've grown older, I've started to feel a bit more of a pull towards some sort of something there, whereas for a large part of my adult life, I kind of ran away from it. I had a bar mitzvah, but I kind of ran away from it. Regardless of where you sit, you can't argue that religion and religious leaders is unbelievably powerful, is inarguably the most powerful force in the universe in the history of humanity. And so there's got to be something there. And that something there is, the best way that I can make sense of it right now is you don't know what the fuck is going to happen in the future. There are way more things that are out of your control than that are in your control. And no matter what steps you take, no matter what actions you make, it may not work out right now for you. But God has a master plan. But there is a reason to have hope. And this isn't about God. This is about what is it that you can lean to in moments of despair or in moments of worry. Whether it is a self-described or, ultimate power or a deity that you believe in. It might not work out. Lots of stuff doesn't. And there's always going to be fear because there's always going to be more unknowns than there are going to be knowns. And religion, I think, has the best solution. There's all of these books on psychology and motivational interviewing and coaching, talking about all of these ways that we can coach people through it. But a part of me really thinks that religion had it all figured out, which is give people some reason to believe that there is something greater to them that they don't have any control over, that they are an instrument of in order to do good in the world. Because then you can always say, I'm going to do the best job that I possibly can for all the best reasons that I possibly can. And I trust that it's going to work out. That's effectively how I approach business too. I don't talk about it in terms of God or the Hanukkah fairy. In Judaism, it's God too. But God, whatever. But I don't talk about it in terms of a God for me, but I talk about it in terms of karma. And in fact, in the Obvious Choice book, I actually use the line, some call it karma, I call it math. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing though. You do good work for the right reasons, done the right way, for long enough over time, and the odds will even out. But if you give up after the first time that something doesn't work, even if you did everything right, even if you had a 70% chance of this working, 3 out of 10 times it's not going to work for you. If you keep going, it'll work out. Some call it karma, some call it God, some call it math. I think it's the same thing. You guys both grew up in much more Bible-oriented areas than I have. I'm interested to know what your reaction was to that. Because my reading of this is very much as an outsider. Like, I was brought up traditionally Jewish. Most of my friends growing up were Jewish. I went to Jewish summer camp. And only later as an adult, when I started to get an interest into basically what religion was, and then I became fascinated in the persuasion and the psychology and the groupthink and the just how powerful all of this was, and not in a bad way. I don't think. I think it can be used for evil, but I think most often it's not. Only then did I start. So I'm kind of like an outsider looking in, but you guys both kind of grew up surrounded by more Bible-oriented thinking. So as I was saying that, what was your reaction? I'm curious, Ryan.
So for those that don't know me out there, other than the fact that I laugh on the podcast twice a week, I'm a minister's son, and by minister I don't mean there's another job that my dad does and part time he gets in front of a storefront. No, he's a career. He went to college for theological studies and graduated, got a master's, now has a doctorate. My dad's Reverend Dr. Donald L. Jones. He has a doctorate in theology. So this is what he does for the last, I don't know, since I've been alive. And the way that I see what John just mentioned and how it correlates to what we're talking about today is that fundamentally every Sunday is a weekly coaching session, if you want to look at it that way. If we want to correlate religion to what we do as coaches, every Sunday, the group of people, the mass, the congregation, they get together and they have a group coaching session. And what you're being coached on, in addition to the guidelines of whatever your religious practice are, right? You've got to learn the terminology. You've got to learn what reps are. You got to learn what sets are. You got to learn what run rep max means, 80% VO2 max. Like, you're learning the guidelines of a systematic process, fasting, prayer, communion, all of those things. And then weekly, you get coached on positivity, basically speaking. You get to spiritually troubleshoot whatever's impeding your path spiritually. And then you get a send-off. And supposedly you leave the Sunday service with greater confidence in your ability to circumvent the issues that you're going to go through during the week. Some type of coaching structure, some template of how to handle situations, and then there's a weekly recharge. So it's very much correlated to me to what I do professionally, and I've taken a lot of that from what my dad does every Sunday, even down to a call to action. Like, most ministers in the South will have some call to action to bring you over to their program, whatever their signature religious program is. And at the end, my dad will stand up and say, I feel like there are one or two of you in the congregation who've lost your way. You feel like your things aren't working out for you. You believed at one point and you don't believe now, or circumstances have caused you to question your belief. The doors of the church are open. Come down to the altar. Let's reacquaint you with your relationship with God, Jesus, Spirit, whatever. And that's how churches increase. The churches that I've been to increase membership, etc. So it's deeply correlated to me, and I think that I have a general fixation on coaching through hope-based invitation. It's kind of like what I do with my clients. So yeah, I'm all for it, man. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I got nothing else. Anything
to add, Amber? I mean, I know you weren't the daughter of a minister, but you definitely grew up in the Bible Belt.
I did. I'm probably the exact opposite in a lot of ways. I'm very uncomfortable with religion as a whole. From an academic view, I think it's interesting. But the spin that I would take on what you said is my faith in self. And so I always lean on what I don't know, I'll figure out because I am capable of figuring it out. And so my hope, my faith lies in me versus something outside of me.
Right.
So that would be my spin on it for me. And that's usually the approach that I take is, look, you're super smart. You're capable. You work hard. You have those ingredients. You will figure it out if this is what you want.
Yeah.
The world's just going to throw some shit at you along the way because, we can't control stuff. But
I think they're both necessary. I think both perspectives. I actually don't think the two perspectives are different.
No, they're not.
I think the belief and the mechanism, it comes from a different place. But it's religion is very much like what we see in nutrition and exercise, especially when you go into a launch, right? Because there's a duality. Number one, you have to be confident about your skill set. You have to take ownership of the fact that you have responsibility to execute based on what you know so far. On the other end of it, there has to be some type of inherent hope that hope's not the right word in this case. Inherent confidence that if you continue to do exactly what you've learned in the best possible way, the math, God, math, religion have to generate a certain result, right? In all cases, it's the quitting that's problematic. The disbelief, the lack of connection and disbelief in how things that'll turn out. That's where people really get into trouble, right? There's a desperation there that really taints your launch. That's where a lot of the concern. That's where a lot of the negativity arrives. Like you've lost your connection to your belief. And whether it's belief in self or belief in karma or belief in math or belief in Jesus, it's all the same thing. When you get disconnected from that, that's when you start to make a lot of mistakes. You get really fearful about your launch. Right. That's what I think.
No, I think that nails it there.
Yeah, it loses a sense of yourself. So what happens then? So this person, let's go back to our story that started this. Mm-hmm. So this person is approaching their launch, and you said they're nervous about.
They're scared about it failing. Yeah, she's put in all of this work. It's just she's afraid of history repeating. She's in a tough financial bind, and she's just put in all of this work, and she's just worried that it'll be for nothing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really it.
And then what happens? What does it all be for nothing mean? Does that mean this launch doesn't work and that's it? She's done. She's given up. Because it's the last straw. Like it's the final straw.
It's more just scrambling and, needing to figure out paying for bills and, direction in life. I don't think she has an answer, if this launch doesn't work out, what to do after if she keeps trying or not. I suspect that she'll keep trying, as she should. She's brilliant at what she does. She just needs time and not
What's your
around.
Opinion, Amber, on this debate? I don't know if it's actually a debate. It's a debate that maybe I only have in my own head with other people who always say, you got to burn the boats. You got to give yourself no other option because that's the only way that you're going to be able to make it happen for yourself. And I'm like, I think that that's actually really bad advice because I think that you should have other options because I think when you don't have any other options, you're forced into behaviors that are often not true to yourself or very short-term thinking. And so I actually think that a lot of people, perhaps in her situation, like, there's options to make money to pay bills. Now, I mean, depending on family situation, if there's kids to look after, parents, whatever, right? It might be hard to find the time to do it all, but you could drive Uber for a few hours a day and, listen to podcasts in between or whatever. But and so then you would not be as worried about paying the bills or this has to work this time or my electricity is going to go out, which is just not a good situation to be in. What's your opinion on that kind of debate? I mean, I'm asking you your opinion and I already gave you mine, which is like the one thing that you don't do, but I trust you enough and you know me enough to tell me that you disagree with me if you disagree with me.
Oh yeah. It's always fun when I disagree with you. It depends on the person, right? For some people, having no other option is the right motivation, right? Because they handle stress in a different way. For me, that would never work because it would cloud my ability to think clearly. But for other people, it's almost like being in a war zone. Like you're super focused, you're able to block out everything else and you can get it done. So it just depends, I think, on how the person reacts to that kind of stress. For me, and I would say for her, that would not be conducive to burn all the boats for sure. Right. But for some people, it's the right thing.
But it sounds like she's kind of at that point. I mean, I don't know who you're talking about. So,
Yeah,
but
I
it
know.
sounds like she's
Yeah. I mean,
almost
she
at
has
that
other
point.
things going on. She teaches classes and some other stuff, but it's not comfortable, to be compared to the amount of work that she's put in for her.
When have you ever worked with a student who had this kind of fear, who before they did a launch was started to get really wrapped up in their head about being worried that it might not work?
Oh yeah, that was every single student in 2020. March 2020, every single human that I talked to was this person. Yeah.
I want to hear about it. Choose one. Give them a fake name.
Well, I'll say Jennifer.
Sure.
And Jennifer freaked herself out so bad that she would not make any decisions or she would take no action. She wouldn't make any decisions. She would repeatedly come back to me, and in some cases, Amber, about every single small choice involved in her business. And she paralyzed. I literally don't know what Jennifer's doing now. But she paralyzed herself. I don't know if she paralyzed herself out of business, but I do know that there was such a fear of perceived failure that it reduced all ability to make the attempt, right? Just, and it's hard. It's difficult to coach somebody through that because you're coaching them through a limiting belief, not tactics, not strategy, not processes.
It's so interesting to me because it's so foreign. This idea is so foreign to me. Like, I don't know why, but I just naturally am like, fuck it. How bad, what's the worst that could happen? How bad could this be? Like, I'm going to just do this thing and probably won't work. But if it does work, great. If it doesn't work, I'll figure out something else that does. And that's literally my process of figuring something out, is just doing stuff and course correcting, versus thinking that I have a master plan. Like, my launches over the years have been so, they when they start, they lack a lot of structure. And it's only the doing of them time and time again in a repeatable manner through which they gain the structure that they have. So what did you say to Jennifer? Yeah, you said Jennifer. What did you say to Jennifer? Because you said it's a limiting belief, which I get. It's hard to coach through.
There isn't, I mean, I could never find the switch. I never found the switch. Whatever the switch is, I tried, you don't want to build it in a cave. The only way that we can really know what we're doing is to present it to another human. We've got to get it out there to get some feedback. Let's look at it like an experiment. We have a theory. We're going to do an experiment. We're going to take a test. We'll see what results we get. We'll adjust from there. I'll be with you every step of the work. Like, this is why personality is so interesting in the business of coaching, because there are just, and I don't like to speak in absolutes, but that experience really gave me the thought that there are some personalities that just aren't, and it's probably true, but I don't like to think this way. There are some personalities that just are not cut out for certain things, I believe.
I
right?
mean, 100%.
And as a coach who feels capable, it's easy to become really hyper self-critical of yourself until you are willing to let that truth be a part of your coaching, that, hey, there are just going to be some humans that I am incapable of helping. And I have a hero complex, so that does not sit well with me, right? That's in my mind, I'm Spider-Man. I can save the kids on the bridge and save the bus on the street at the same time. I'll figure it out. And that sucks, dude. But there are just some people.
What was Jennifer's background?
Wife. Full-time stay-at-home wife. Full-time with a lovely employed and supportive husband.
Okay, so husband had like more of a conventional career.
Yep.
Like a decent, like a good, decent salary, whatever.
Fully supportive. That I know of, no.
Okay.
She never spoke about any type of work that she did, only that she'd always wanted to be a coach. And this was going to be her thing. And again, she had a supportive environment.
Sure.
Like,
this is it's funny because you said that, and it's actually what I would have predicted, where she's trying to monetize her hobby.
right.
And maybe for a whole host of reasons. Maybe she wants to contribute financially to the house. Maybe she needs to. Maybe the household needs it. Maybe she personally needs to feel like she needs to contribute to the house that way, which is ridiculous because Allison doesn't work, and what she contributes to the household is way more important than what I contribute to the household, and harder. But whatever reason that she feels like she needs to do it, what very often happens is we turn our passion into a job, and then it ceases to be our passion.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of the time we should actually keep whatever we're doing as our passion. Just because you love something doesn't mean that it should become your career. And I'm a perfect example of that. I love working out. Not this morning. This morning sucked. Most of the time. Most of the time I love working out. This morning sucked, man.
That's so perfect.
But I was a personal trainer, and I was in the career, and I decided that the career of coaching other people fitness took away from my enjoyment of fitness. When I was a personal trainer, when I coached people in the gym, I did not love working out as much myself. I was tired. I was physically tired. I was just there all the time. Like, the last place that you want to be after spending 10 or 11 or 12 hours a day somewhere is there for another hour and like having to push yourself. Or multiple times I hired another trainer. I did an exchange with another trainer at the gym, and like it worked well for a little bit, but I was just tired. It was just something I didn't want to think about because I was thinking about it so much, and I needed to kind of explore other aspects of my brain. It was only when I actually stopped working in the gym full time and I started doing stuff online that I started to love working out again. And we see that a lot with our online trainer mentorship students, particularly. A lot of our online trainer academy students are, it's more of an entry-level program, which is cool, but a lot of them are kind of like trying to figure out their next steps and kind of in the middle of the grind and figuring out how to get out of it. Whereas a lot of the online trainer mentorship students have had some success, and they're much more career-minded, and so they're getting back that part of themselves. And it's actually pretty cool to see because they start showing up to the calls over time, right? And you start looking at them and you're just like, yo, you got a little bit more of like a bounce to your step, metaphorically. Like, you got a little bit more energy in your face, or you're when somebody's voice is like calmer but more energized?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a better way to describe that. You're just like, they feel
more full-bodied.
Oh, that's good.
Both in it.
That's good. Mm-hmm. We start feeling that. And with Jennifer, you're right. Maybe she shouldn't be a coach. Maybe she should teach the spin classes that she goes to instead of just attending the classes, and that's her thing. But that's
part of it too.
That's a valuable realization.
Figuring out what the actual fear is, because I struggled with this when I started, and so for me it was just embarrassment and feeling stupid. Like, that's my biggest hang up, 100%. And so, like, putting myself out there and not hearing anything and looking stupid to others, like, right. That was my hang up.
To who? Who are the others in your mind?
It doesn't matter.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I know it doesn't matter, and I know it's probably not one person. You're like, I don't want to look stupid to Angela, or in Ren's case, Chandra, but
with no H.
With no H. There's no, if you spell it, there's no H, but it's how you say it. Yeah. But who were they? Who were they in your mind, Amber?
I mean, literally no one. I can't trace it back to anything. There's no like type of person or whatever. It's fully in my head that I just did not and still struggle with, like, appearing stupid. I mean, school growing up, I was the quiet kid. Everybody thought I was getting A's, and like secretly I'm struggling, like to like keep my shit together at school. Barely graduated college, so like it's reliving that all over again, So I was just going back through that experience, but in this different arena.
Yeah.
And so that for me, that was the problem of not actually launching and taking a long time to get through it, and then failing a few times before anything happened and trying to get through it. It's rough.
There's a fear setting element to this of, have you actually, if you are scared of whatever you're scared of, and I get it, everybody gets it. I think it's a very natural human thing. But if you're scared of launching something, if you're scared of whatever, putting something you've been working on out into the world, have you actually taken the time to write down what it is that you're scared of?
Mm-hmm.
Like, have you actually written it down? And the way that I do this exercise is I write down the worst case scenario. Like, I sit down and I actually write down on a piece of paper this line. This is my prompt. If everything that could go wrong does go wrong, what would happen? And then I just let my brain go to all these deep, dark places. And the reason that I do that is when we actually write down and verbalize our fears, we realize that what we're actually scared of is not actually that scary most of the time. We're like, well, if the worst case scenario was this, and if I'd be okay with this happening, then what's stopping me? Now you have it in front of you. And sometimes what's there is like, they're all going to laugh at you, and that's like, am I okay with thinking that people that I grew up with are greedy, badly spoken, doing a bad job, silly, look funny, whatever negative adjective that nobody's ever actually thinking, because everybody's thinking about themselves and not you anyway, but you think that they're thinking about you. Whatever that is, if they actually were thinking that, do you give a shit? Like, really? And sometimes you might say, yes, I do, and decide that it's not worth doing the thing. Most of the time, though, at least when I've done this, I'm like, okay, well, do the people that I really love and care about and ever going to see or talk to, will they ever think that thing? It's like, no, they don't even look at what I do online. Like, they don't know. Even my wife. I'll be like, hey, did you see this thing that I was doing? She's like, what? Huh? Like, okay, love you, babe.
Love you too.
It's so much deeper than that. Yeah, thanks for this. No, it's so much deeper than that, of course, with the people who actually care. But you might come to the end of this fear setting exercise where you write down, if everything that could go wrong does actually go wrong, what would happen? You might say, I'm not okay with that. And you might say, okay, I'm not going to do the thing. Great. Any decision is better than indecision.
Mm-hmm.
If you decide you're not going to do something, don't do it. Jennifer, take care of the house. Do an amazing job raising the kids. Fuck, that's a harder job than anything you can do in the gym, dude. And more important, not to say that there's nothing wrong with working in the gym, but like, holy hell, that's a noble job. The most noble job ever in the history of humans. And I get that there's a lot of pressure, particularly on women, not just on women. I mean, I have a friend who's a stay-at-home dad, for example. His wife is the breadwinner. It happens, but I think traditionally the very old-fashioned, even friends of mine where both spouses work, it's still generally the mother who takes on the bulk of the household duties in addition to the job, even if she makes more money than the man does, which is the case in a number of cases, actually. And I think women are just smarter. But any decision you make is better than no decision. And that decision might be, all right, I'm not going to do this. Cool. Find the next thing. Or don't. And be happy being in an in-between phase of things. That's kind of where I'm at right now, to be honest. I'm just reading a lot of books. It's wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful. Why don't you... Do you know that episode, Amber? Did you find it? No, the permission marketing
I don't
one?
remember what we called it.
Yeah, we didn't call it permission marketing. I think that's why, right?
No, we did not.
If I Google... Len, take up some time for me, please.
Yeah, I think the reason for the launch is to have a launch. Right? I think we get distracted by thinking, especially early on in online business, I think we get distracted by thinking that the reason for the launch is to accumulate a certain amount of dollars. But the reason for the launch is to get better information more quickly about how to have a successful launch. And you can't start walking that path until you actually do it. Right. And I think that's what people misinterpret. And it's caused a lot of fear for me in the past. But once I figured out that the whole reason to launch this program, product, or thing is to get as much information from as many other people as quickly as possible so that I can reiterate for iteration. And you just don't ever get there if you don't ever present the thing to anybody. You can't work on a show that nobody's seen.
Right. Let's do this episode, because I don't know what the permission marketing one is either. Episode 103, this is the importance of collaboration. So this is how to actually work with others, and to work with others well. It's not quite permission marketing, but it goes into a lot of how you can create something that benefits everybody. And I think that's the best way to win. Something I'm thinking about a lot lately is not trying to eat the smallest bit of pie yourself, but instead maybe expand the pie so that everybody gets a big slice. And that's a lot of what this episode is. So that's episode 103. It's called The Importance of Collaboration. Hope that you enjoy it. Thank you for listening. We'll talk soon.